Go for the poles and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
What's up, everybody, and welcome into the Philly Sports Power Hour with Bill Colarulo. Happy Friday to everybody. Happy March 1st. We're getting there. Almost springtime. Almost golf season again. But it is March 1st. And there's the old saying, March comes in like a lion and goes out like a lamb. And we're going to talk about that in a second. Because I want to look at free agents who came into this city like a lion and ended up being a lamb. And it's topical. It's March 1st, and we have free agency in the NFL less than 2 weeks away. But we'll look at all four of our major sports teams at free agents who came in like a lion and ended up being a lamb. We also got to talk about the combine a little bit. Dollar Dog Night down at the ballpark is no more. And we should be joined later on in the show by a surprise guest today. Someone who's never been on the Philly Sports Power Hour before. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that. So that should be a great guest joining the show around 10:20. But let me get a little roll call in the chat from the Power Hour crew. We are streaming live across JAKIB Sports, across all my social media platforms, Bill Colarulo, Philly Sports Talk. We are also live here on TikTok. But I see people checking in nice and early on this beautiful Friday morning. Chuck Hutton in the house. My man, Wine Niners Wine, always in the house. Adams Exploits, William Stark, Bry Guy, Flexin' and Steppin', Jim G, David Laprati, Twiz, Slimville Slugger in the building, Matt Beach, Niners all damn day, I see you, John, Thaddeus, Jared Ford, a lot of people checking in today. Love it. Mr. Rudy Poo, RJ Ramirez, and I see more people checking in on TikTok as well. So it is good to see everybody. If I missed you, I apologize, but I appreciate you here. Chad Crawford, I see you checking in as well. So it's good to spend one more hour with you before we hit the weekend. And if you want to tune in tomorrow, I will be on The Fanatic, 9 a.m., both Saturday and Sunday. So that should be a good show, both of those days. But let's jump in. Because before we get into the Lion and the Lamb free agency talk, little circle around some of the big news in the city right now. So one of them is Dollar Dog Night. Dollar Dog Night no more, and fans are losing their damn minds. Maybe I'm in the minority here, but I could not care less that Dollar Dog Night is over. I really could not care less that people now can't glut themselves with disgusting hot dogs at Citizens Bank Park. You could still get 2 for $5. Really? We need more than 2 hot dogs? How many damn hot dogs do you need to eat at a ball game? I mean, really, and we're going to be up in arms? I don't want to get on my pedestal here, but where obesity is in America, we're mad that we no longer have Dollar Dog Night so we can glut ourselves with disgusting hot dogs? Come on now. And I get it. You know, people are upset. 4 to 5 dogs minimum. My producer says he has 4 to 5 hot dogs minimum at Dollar Dog Night. So now you get buy one, get one. So you can get 2 for $5. But really, come on now. People are acting crazy about this dollar dogs thing. And I know the Phillies are trying to say, hey, well, you were throwing them at each other. I'm sure that was a part of it. But I've also seen reports it could be because they just don't have enough workers to keep up with the demand, and the lines were around Citizens Bank Park trying to get these dollar dogs. But come on now. Listen, I understand that hot dogs, and this may be an unpopular opinion, hot dogs, an American staple. It's an American pastime to have a hot dog at a ball game. A hot dog, singular, at a ball game. Do you know how disgusting freaking hot dogs are? And we're glutting ourselves with 5, 6, 7 damn hot dogs? Please. I'm not one of these people who's upset that they got rid of dollar dog night at the ballpark. But we have to have things to complain about. Mr. Rudy Poo. Hot dogs are meant to be thrown at high speeds. Well, that's part of the reason they got rid of it. But yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, weren't the Phillies throwing hot dogs too? Doesn't the Fanatics shoot hot dogs into the crowd from like a shooting gun or something? I can't remember. I thought I remember him doing that. But anyway, let's jump over. Because the combine's going in full swing right now. And some people are really into that. Some people like watching the combine and watching these guys run their 40-yard dash and put up their bench press and do the vertical jump and all that stuff. And every single time the combine hits, I can't help but think about Mike Mamula. Every Philadelphia Eagles fan who's probably over the age of 30 knows what I'm talking about when I say the name Mike Mamula, the workout warrior, Mike Mamula. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, in 1995, Mike Mamula was one of the only players who trained for the combine. Now all these guys do it. All these guys are smart enough to say, hey, we know what they're going to test us on. Let's train for it. So Mamula did it. And I'm going to get to how the decision the Philadelphia Eagles made at the 1995 draft led to one of the worst days in my life as a Philadelphia Eagles fan in 2002. Well, really, I think it may have been 2003 at that point because it was January, but the 2002 season. So Mamula goes into that combine, training for those testing measurements that they were going to do. He puts the bench up 26 times, 225, 26 reps, which was higher than the top tackle that year, Tony Baselli. He runs his 40-yard dash in 4.58. He has a 38.5-inch vertical. Back then, they did the 4-square run, not the 3-cone drill. He had the second best time in the 4-square run. And he scored a 49 out of 50 on his Wonderlic test, which was like the second highest ever. So the Philadelphia Eagles are so impressed with these numbers. They trade their 12th overall pick and 2 second-round picks to the Tampa Bay Bucks to move up in the draft to take Mike Mamula at 7. Now, Mamula didn't have a horrible career, wasn't worthy of the 7th overall pick, ends up playing 77 games for the Eagles, 31.5 sacks, but that's not what ruined us. That's not what led to one of the most disappointing days in my life as a Philadelphia Eagles fan. It's what they gave up to get him, because what the Tampa Bay Bucks then did is they used the 12th overall pick on a defensive tackle named Warren Sapp. And then they took those 2 second-round picks and they traded them to move up to number 28, and they took a linebacker named Derek Brooks. And 7 years later, in the last game at Veterans Stadium, the NFC Championship game, where Rondé Barber picks off Donovan McNabb and takes it back the other way. Do you know who was on that defense for the Tampa Bay Bucks? Warren Sapp, and Derek Brooks. Mike Mamula ended up retiring after the 2000 season, wasn't even playing anymore. And what the Eagles gave up to get him led to Warren Sapp, Derek Brooks, and one of the most devastating losses in Philadelphia Eagles franchise history, the last game at Veterans Stadium. It should have been poetic justice for us to finally get over the hump, win that game, and then the Bucs go on to beat the Raiders in the Super Bowl. And we were all sitting at home. Damn it. Still pisses me off about Mike Mamula. Mamula will school you. Never really came to fruition. Well, as we're talking about disappointments, let's talk about some free agent disappointments over the years. And I know everybody's talking about the Darius Slay thing, and I'm not really going to get into it. Okay, so Darius Slay and Steven Nelson went on his podcast and talk about how Philadelphia Eagles fans are tough because they boo you when you're not playing well. Is that news? I mean, come on. Is that news? Anyone who's ever been down to a game, if the Eagles are having a bad first half, yeah, guess what? When they go in to the locker room, fans are going to be booing. And I used to work down there, as you know. And I used to be walking the players into the locker room at halftime. And yeah, it gets pretty bad down there. It gets pretty ugly. You have a bad first half, the fans are going to let you hear it. And you have a bad game, they're really going to let you hear it. Not news. Now, people are upset because it's Darius Slay, and I get it. Look, he doesn't keep his mouth shut. He likes to talk. This is who he is. I still think he's liked down at the NovaCare complex. I still think he's liked by his teammates. But, yeah, he should probably pull back a little bit. He hasn't learned yet, so he's going to keep doing it. Seth Joyner went after him this season. Remember that clip blew up after Seth said something on our postgame show, and then Slay had to tweet back at him and talk about him. That's just who Slay is. But let's talk about, in light of it being March 1st, coming in like a lion and going out like a lamb, I want to talk about some of the biggest disappointments in free agent history when it comes to Philadelphia sports. Players that came in like a lion and ended up being a lamb. Let's start with the Philadelphia Eagles, and there's a bunch, but I'm going to give you my top 6, I guess. Number 6, Demetrius Bell. Back in 2012. Who remembers Demetrius Bell? The Philadelphia Eagles signed him to be a left tackle to take over for Jason Peters, who kept getting hurt. It's amazing Peters continued to play after that. Demetrius Bell comes in here, supposing to be our savior. He ends up starting 5 games, losing his job to King Dunlap, and never played again in the NFL. And let's talk about the freak, Javon Curse. Who remembers that signing? I was in college. I was so excited because Javon Curse had the nickname The Freak when he was in Tennessee because he was that damn good. Averaging 11 and a half sacks a year in his 4 years in Tennessee. He comes here to Philadelphia after signing, at the time, a record deal for defensive linemen. 5.5 sacks he averaged in 4 years. He wasn't bad. Curse wasn't bad. It just he was not the freak that we thought we were getting. Then who remembers the Stacey Andrews signing? Stacey Andrews. Part of the reason they brought him in here was not only to start, but because they thought that would save his brother Sean Andrews' career, because Sean Andrews had lost his mind. So they thought bringing in Stacey Andrews was going to help him. Stacey Andrews ends up starting only 2 games. And maybe the worst part of all that is the day they announced they signed Stacey Andrews was the day Brian Dawkins signed in Denver. And I'll never forget when they asked Andy Reid at his press conference about Dawkins, and he said, "This is Stacey Andrews' day. We're not going to talk about Brian Dawkins today." You just lost one of the greatest players, if not the greatest player in franchise history, and we're going to act as if this is Stacey Andrews' day, and we're not even going to address Brian Dawkins? Get the hell out of here, Big Red. Going to keep it going. Byron Maxwell. Thought he was going to be the savior at corner. Was a disaster. Traded after one season. DeMarco Murray, I see people in the chat. Who remembers that one? Signs a 5-year, $40 million deal after dominating the Eagles when he was in Dallas. He comes in here in his only year, he averages 3.6 yards per carry, the lowest in 20 years at the time. DeMarco Murray. The hell out of here. But for me, the worst free agent signing in Philadelphia Eagles history, who came in like a lion and went out like a lamb, was Nnamdi Asomugha. Who remembers that one? Nnamdi Asomugha was one of the greatest players in the league. And he comes in here, signs a 5-year, $60 million deal. And in 2011, we made the excuse, it's because they have him playing zone coverage. That's the problem. Nnamdi's playing zone coverage. He's got to play man. So then 2012, they let him play man coverage, and he was even worse. And he was a horrible leader. And I see Slagger57 in the chat. Yes, he would eat lunch in his car. He would eat lunch in his car and not even eat lunch with his teammates. So for me, the worst free agent signing in Philadelphia Eagles history, Nnamdi Asomugha. And then let's go to the Sixers, because they've had some bad ones. I'd put Tobias Harris on that list now. Kwame Brown. Who remembers the Kwame Brown signing? Matt Geiger back in 98. They gave Geiger 6 years, $51 million. Geiger didn't do here. He didn't do anything when he got here, and they gave him a 6-year, $51 million deal. But for me, the number one for the Sixers is a tie between Elton Brand back in 2008, Elton Brand, who signed a 5-year, $82 million deal, who was playing great out in L.A., his scoring dropped over 40% when he came to the Sixers. And then to make matters worse, he becomes the GM, and Al Horford. Al Horford's got to be the worst. I have him tied with Elton Brand, but Al Horford probably takes the cake as the worst free agent signing in Sixers history. 4 years, $109 million. He only played one season, looked like he lost it. Freaking Al Horford. Anyway, Phillies. Let's go over to Fighting Phils. I got David Bell on the list. David Bell in 2002 signed a 4-year, $17 million deal. Part of the reason why that one was so bad was because they had David Bell at third base. They had Placido Polanco at second base. And when Chase Utley was ready to take over for Polanco, instead of moving Polanco to third and getting rid of David Bell, they trade Polanco, who went on to have a .338 batting average, and David Bell batted .248. I put Adam Eaton on that list in 2006. Now, Adam Eaton was on the team when they won the World Series. He was supposed to be our ace when they signed him in 2006. He watched them win the World Series from his damn couch. That's how bad Adam Eaton was. And then to round it out, as we're talking about free agents who came in like lions and ended up being lambs, let's talk about the fly guys. And the worst one in Philadelphia Flyers history for me is Humongous Universe, Ilya Bryzgalov. Who remembers Bryzgalov finally being the Flyers' savior at goalie? Turned out to be a disaster, and they're still paying him. They had to buy him out of his 8-year, $51 million deal. They're going to be paying him $2 million a year until 2027. And I see all of you in the chat throwing out some of your worst free agents in Philadelphia sports history. But we're going to turn this to a positive, because when we get back, we are going to be joined for the first time ever on the Philly Sports Power Hour, a surprise guest, and you don't want to miss this one. This is the Philly Sports Power Hour. Hit that like button, hit that share button. When we come back, for the first time, a surprise guest. Stay tuned.
Go for the polls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com. Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Philadelphia fans, we're cut from a different cloth. Born into a brotherhood and bonded to our team for life. We believe anything is possible because we've witnessed the impossible. While we may be from different neighborhoods, come Sunday, we are one, and we will be heard. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back into the Philly Sports Power Hour with Bill Colarulo. And I see you all in the chat trying to guess who the guest is going to be. People saying Chris Sims. I would never bring that clown on. Angelo Cataldi, Donald Trump, Howie Roseman. None of them have anything on my man, Johnny Marks, joining the Philly Sports Power Hour for the first time. What's up, John?
I didn't realize this was my first time on the show. Bill, what up, dude?
It is. You've been on my other show, but you've never been on the Philly Sports Power Hour. So I know everybody's going to be excited to see my man. Do it for Chuck from Mount Airy. He's rocking the shirt today. Check him out.
Yeah, I meant to just finish my workout at the Y, and I was, have to do laundry. So this was what I decided to wear today. There you go.
I'll tell you. So you're not on the radio anymore. So now you're going to just get swole, right? You're just going to be jacked out of your mind.
I'm closer to 50 than 40. So, you worry about cholesterol and heart disease and all that stuff. So, yeah, I was actually the class I'm in. It's barbells, it's dumbbells, it's high intensity, but it's also mostly women, older women. So there's like average age 50-year-old woman and me in this class.
So you feel good. It makes you feel good about yourself.
I feel like a prime athlete compared to these other people. That's good.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, let's jump into some things because I know people miss hearing from you every single day, but they can catch you every night at 9 o'clock right here on YouTube if you haven't checked out John Mark's YouTube channel yet.
You're damn right. At John Mark's Media, subscribe and watch every night.
Yep, 9 o'clock. I've been on the show. It's a lot of fun, and John does a good job. Doesn't just talk sports sometimes. He gets into a lot of good stuff, so make sure you check it out. But let's jump in. I want to talk a little bit about some things I haven't had a chance to talk to you about. So one of the big things was A.J. Brown. He calls into your former show, talks to Jack Fritz, talks to Ike Reese. What's your take on this whole A.J. Brown situation?
Man, like I feel like he feels like he's misunderstood, that he's being painted as this diva, and the issues with the Eagles were really surrounding him and because of him. And like, I can't tell you that I've listened to a ton of sports radio since I left WIP, but I know how sports radio works. And it seems like a lot of people, a lot of sports fans in particular, Eagles fans on social media, on Twitter, have this belief that WIP was making up stories and spreading false rumors, where he's probably just seeing things, and he's seeing his mentions that are saying like WIP saying this and WIP saying that. WIP's not starting coming up with false stories or false narratives. WIP is saying, hey, would you trade A.J. Brown for Patrick Surtain? Would you trade A.J. Brown for a first-round draft pick? Do you think A.J. Brown is a problem in the locker room? Do you think A.J. Brown has a bad relationship with Jalen Hurts? When you have one of, if not the biggest, certainly in the modern day, historic collapse in Philadelphia sports history, people are going to start searching for answers, right? So when you go 10-1 and you have real wins, and I'm talking about real wins, they weren't fluky wins. They beat the Chiefs on the road. They had a great back and forth win against the Bills, and then everything falls apart. We're wondering what the hell's going on. And we saw the things that were happening on the sideline with AJ and with Jalen before. So I think he got caught up in feeling like he was being blamed for what happened with the Eagles and why they fell apart. And he decided WIP was the primary aggressor in that, which WIP is doing what WIP does. WIP is going to talk about stuff. WIP is as powerful and as popular because fans want to listen to it and fans want engagement from WIP. So, you know, like, I never looked at AJ and said, hey, he's to blame, trade him. But I look at the entire situation and I have to wonder if him and Jalen, if their relationship is good enough going forward.
Yeah, there's definitely been some, I guess, I don't know if you want to call them reports, but where there's smoke, there's fire. And something does seem off between Jalen and A.J. Brown, especially when you go from them talking about how they're best friends and they do everything together, and now you don't hear that as much. But I have been of the belief that A.J. Brown is not this quote-unquote diva that some people are making him out to be, and that he should be traded. And I've been saying people calling for him to be traded are insane. I mean, where do you sit on that? Is A.J. Brown a diva? Should he be on this football team?
I don't think I don't blame him. Do I think he has wide receiver diva tendencies? Like, okay, but fine. But, like, guess what? The good wide receivers in the NFL, the great wide receivers in the NFL, that A.J. Brown is one of those guys. They want the ball. They want to be productive. They want to get 2,000 yards receiving. They want to get 15 touchdowns. I don't know the dynamic between him and Jalen because, Bill, you said it. I didn't realize they were best friends until they traded for AJ. And I'm like, oh, really? They're best friends? I didn't know that they were that close. And then even when given the opportunity on with Ike and Jack to kind of clarify the relationship, I would say, like, he didn't clarify anything for me. He said they're fine. He said it's BS what's being said about him. But he also didn't come out and say, hey, like, Jalen and I are still very good friends. Jalen and I are still very close. He kept it very, what I would say, professional about it. And the same way I would answer a question if I didn't have if the relationship between me and a teammate had deteriorated. I'm not going to come out and say our relationship had went to hell, but it sure didn't seem like, and he was given a lot of opportunities to where he could have had Jalen's back or he could have stood up for Jalen towards the end of the season, and he didn't do it. And also remember this, that when AJ came out and they had a team meeting and he had said that they need to trust the coaches, that the players need to trust the coaches and the coaching staff. He was vocal about that. One of the first stories that came out after the season was that Jalen did not trust the coaches, and he had an issue with the coaches, and he didn't like the play calling and everything else. So it almost seemed like maybe their heads were butting over what was going on in the locker room. But I'm not trading him just to trade him, Bill. to answer your question.
Yeah, I think if you're trying to fix this offense, I don't think getting rid of one of, if not your best player, helps you fix that offense. But you mentioned Jalen Hurts because now we have seen multiple reports. It started with Jeff McClain. Then you had Joe Santoliquito. Then we had D. Gunn tweet out all about how Jalen Hurts needs to be a more vocal leader. Jalen Hurts changed a little bit once he got his big contract. What are you expecting from Jalen Hurts in 2024?
Well, I mean, and I can tell you that having interviewed Jalen a couple times, not only in person, but also on the phone, that he isn't exactly the warmest and bubbliest guy in the world. And everything that I've heard behind the scenes was that he does give a little bit more in the locker room. His teammates do see a different side of him. But for the most part, he is guarded in front of the media. Did he change? Did the money change him? Did he act differently? It seems like that's the narrative right now towards him. And by the way, like, he won't be the first athlete to have done that. And he won't be the last athlete to do that, right? It doesn't mean that he's turned into this major JO because he got a new contract and he got money. But it's also sometimes guys say, hey, now I'm a corporation. Now I'm one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. And maybe that does change you and change your way of thinking and change the way that you act a little bit. But Jalen's a smart guy, and I think he's smart enough to know that whatever the issues were last year and whatever issues his teammates may or may not have had with him, that he's got to work a little bit harder at some of the relationships that he has in the locker room. I remember when Joey Porter went to, or it was maybe not Joey Porter, it was the other former Steeler that James Harrison, when he went to the Patriots, and he went to the Patriots in his last year or second to last year. And he hated Tom Brady from all his years in Pittsburgh. He hated him. And he went to New England hating him. And Tom Brady came in and he met him and he introduced himself and welcomed him into the locker room and everything else. And Harrison couldn't stop raving about the kind of leader he was. Tom had a relationship with everybody on that team, from the practice squad guys to the superstars. And I think Jalen needs to realize, as the quarterback of this team and as the highest paid player, that he needs to develop some of those relationships, because guys, I don't think felt like he was approachable last year.
Yeah, you mentioned Tom Brady, and I've spoke about him on this show before, that he was the reason the Patriot way worked as well as it did. And I'm not taking anything away from Belichick, but the reason the Patriot way worked was because they had the greatest leader we may have ever seen in the NFL. Yeah, what he did on the field was great, but I think you are right. He was such a good leader off of the field that the Patriot way was able to work when you have a guy like Brady, who, did you see, run a faster 40-yard dash at 45 years old than he did when he was like 20?
It's amazing. No, it's
he
amazing.
Could play, man. He could probably come back.
He developed himself. I mean, you talk about someone that worked their butt off to become the best player they possibly could. And by the way, that's something you saw from Jalen, his development as a quarterback before this year, going into the year, the Super Bowl year. He was nothing short of amazing, the development that he made. But yeah, like, it's not just about all of your tangible assets that you have on the field. If you remember, we spoke a lot about the intangibles with Jalen Hurts, and that's what made him special. And if he could be a good enough quarterback, the intangibles would make him a special player. But last year, it felt like the intangibles actually weren't there like we had seen in previous years.
Yeah, you just reminded me of Ndamukong Suh. This was before last season. Ndamukong Suh was on the Rich Eisen show, and they asked him about Tom Brady as a leader and Jalen Hurts, and Ndamukong Suh actually compared them as leaders. He talked about how Tom Brady was more vocal, but that Jalen would lead by example, and basically said, like, Hurts is one of the best leaders I've ever been around. But that's when they're winning. So when you're losing, everything gets magnified, man.
Right. It's like what AJ said, that he was doing the same thing when they were 10-1, and it was, oh, look how focused he is. Oh, look, he's all business on the sidelines. The minute you start losing games, now he's not approachable. Now he doesn't want to talk to his teammates. And by the way, like, I think that wasn't there with some of the teammates, that they weren't saying, like, why isn't he talking to anybody? Like, we're losing games. This offense is free fall. And why is he acting like he almost seemed annoyed on the sideline in a lot of those games? Maybe it was with the offense. Maybe it was with the play calling. I don't know. But I think it's something, like I had said, this he's not the first player to maybe act like that. So I don't really think it's alarming as long as he realizes. And some stories we saw coming out was that he realizes that maybe he needs to make a couple changes as a leader.
And talking about how things get magnified when you're losing compared to winning, Sirianni, same way. When he's mugging the camera, most people are talking about how much they love him. When he's taunting fans, most people, I know there were still some it rubbed the wrong way, but most people are like, oh, he's perfect for Philadelphia. And now it's, look, he's a clown. He doesn't do anything. Where do you sit on the Nick Sirianni chat?
Yeah, I remember after the Kansas City game, it was there where he's yelling at the fans, and it's like, all right, well, what other NFL coach acts like Nick Sirianni on the sidelines, towards the fans, all that stuff? And Eagles fans didn't want to hear it and didn't want to criticize him because they were 10-1, or I guess 9-1, 8-1 at that point. The minute he starts losing, guess what? People are going to turn on him. So the reality is, as long as Nick Sirianni continues to win, or if he gets back to winning, people are going to ignore that stuff, or they're going to think it's cool. But I mean, ultimately, if you just take everything winning and losing out of it, I think his behavior is ridiculous, and he needs to stop acting like a frat boy and realize he's a head coach in the National Football League. You know, like you can't be dumping, go to a can of Miller Lite and dump it on your head. You know what I mean? Like you're now you're the CEO of the Eagles. You're not there for your offensive genius. You're not there. You're literally, they brought in somebody else to run a different offense. You're a CEO. So I think it's time for him to grow up a little bit. The one thing I always appreciated about Nick Sirianni, and I like Nick. I think Nick's a good dude. He's a good father. He's a good family man. And his guys like him. But they played hard for him, and they responded to him until the skid last year, where it felt like guys just were tuning him out and nothing was working. So he better win, or he's gonna be out of a job.
Yeah, and they better win early, because now I was not someone who thought they should have moved on from Sirianni. I think he had done enough that he deserved to come back. But even I have said, if they don't come out of the gates winning games, it's going to be really tough, because the noise is going to be so loud in this city that Sirianni should be fired. So they better get out to a hot start.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's interesting because we know their opponents. We don't know when they're playing the opponents. We think the Browns is going to be in Brazil, the first game of the season.
Yeah.
If they have a really tough schedule to start off, look out. Jeffrey Lurie's not a knee-jerk reaction guy. So he's like, it's not like you're David Tepper of the Panthers where he's going to be canning head coaches. But if you have a slow start and they look at this team as saying like, hey, this is a team that should still be like a Super Bowl type team, anything could happen. The pressure's on Sirianni, and he really, because he's not controlling the offense and the play calling anymore, there's really only so much he can do. So he's almost like powerless as far as what he can do as a head coach. So they better win, or he starts the season on the hot seat, to your point.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, and Sirianni and Roseman both spoke at the Combine. I wasn't expecting to get much from either one of them. What did you take from anything you heard at the Combine from those two guys?
Yeah, pretty much what you had said. They're not going to really give you much of anything. The one thing of note that jumps off at least the top of my head is the Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox soundbite that he had, which was he doesn't want them playing in another uniform. He doesn't want them seeing them wearing different colors. And Jason Kelsey, I mean, he's retiring, right? Do we all believe he's retiring? I guess we'll see. But Fletcher Cox is the name that he's not going to retire. He's still very productive. He was productive last year. He might have been their best defensive lineman, especially in the playoffs and at the end of the season. So is Howie going to bring him back on a 1 or a 2 year deal where you're going to have to pay him $10 million a year or something like that, because he's going to have suitors in the open market. Teams will want him. Andy Reid might want him in Kansas City if they can't get anything done with Chris Jones. So, Fletcher may be back. So that's the one takeaway from Howie, at least the first thing that I think of, is that he had said it before, that the guys that were a part of this Super Bowl run that they drafted, the Brandon Grahams, the Fletcher Coxes, the Jason Kelseys, those guys are important to the organization, and they're not just going to get rid of them because they're in their 30s and they may be on their last couple seasons. So Fletcher might be back this year, at least after listening to Howie.
Yeah, and you're right. Fletcher did play at we lost Johnny. Oh, and he's coming back. I see him back in the thing. There he is. We lost you for a second. What'd you get, a phone call?
No, I'm not sure. You were just gone.
So I agree. I think Cox may come back, and he did play at a high level. For me, I think Jason Kelsey's retiring. I think he made up his mind a long time ago. I don't think there's any question about it. You hear him talk. He talks about the Eagles in third person now, which I've never heard him do before. And I think I may have heard you say this before. I said this and had some people come after me. I'm okay if Jason Kelsey retires. I don't want to pay a center that much money. As great as he is, he's a legend. We can utilize that money elsewhere. Let's roll with Cam Jurgens and save about $10 million on the cap.
Yeah, you drafted him in the second round, right? Like to be the center. Now you're going to have to replace him as a guard, or maybe maybe Steen or Stein, whatever his name is, can come in and play. But like Jason Kelsey's had an unbelievable career. Retire, man. It's time for you to move on. You're going to make a lot of money in the media. You've been an all-time Eagles player. You're going to be in the Hall of Fame. You're going to get your jersey retired. I just think it's time. I think it's time to move on. I think it's time for Jason to retire. And if he comes back, I'm not going to go kicking and screaming. But if you ask me, you want him to retire or to come back, I want him to retire.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. All right, and let's talk about Roseman one more time, because one of the things we know, Howie Roseman has not valued the linebacker position in recent years, hasn't really valued the safety position in recent years. But everything you hear about Vic Fangio and his style of defense is you need good linebacker, you need a good safety. You think that'll change? You think free agency in about a week and a half that you'll see Howie Roseman make a splash in one of those two positions?
No. I mean, will they maybe value linebacker a little bit more than they did last year? Yeah, they could add better players. I mean, Christ, you went in the last season with guys and starters that weren't even on the roster for the most part, right? You look at Nick Morrow, and I don't even remember who else the linebackers were last year. Yeah, I mean, like you watch Kyle Hamilton of the Ravens, and you see the combo of speed, size, athleticism, coverage ability, playing the run, blitzing the quarterback, and everything else. And you had an opportunity to take him. He slid because the safety position isn't valued in the NFL today as much as it used to be, or at least it should be. And look at the Ravens. He was one of the best players on the team. So it feels like Blankenship's going to be a starter. It's a damn shame that that Sidney Brown tore his ACL, because he showed real promise towards the end of the season.
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, could they take Jeremiah Trotter Jr. with a second-round draft pick? Yeah, I mean, I hope they look at the linebacker position and they say, hey, we gotta get better players in there. And I think they know they have to get better players, but I don't see them spending a lot of money or high draft assets to do it.
I hope you're wrong, because I think they need to make a splash in free agency and bring in a linebacker and a safety, spend the money to do it. I actually think the cornerback room is fourth on my list. I'm okay with the cornerbacks and the young players they have, especially with Isaiah Rodgers coming back. But I need to see them spend money, linebacker, safety, solidify this defense. Even if they use a draft pick, we can't go into this season with Nakobe Dean, who's a question mark. Whatever draft pick they would pick for linebacker, question mark. You know, there's really nobody on this roster right now where you could say, okay, I feel good about that linebacker coming into next year. So I'm praying you're wrong, John.
Yeah, actually, I remember talking to you on your Legal Hands to the Face podcast about Nakobe Dean before last season.
Yeah.
And saying it'd be a mistake to think that he's going to solve your problems as a linebacker. He's going to get the first shot at the job. Last year, he got the first shot at the job. This year, I don't think you can just say, hey, it's his job. You got to have a backup plan, or you have to have another plan, because he has shown me, he's given me no reason to believe that he's your starter going forward.
Yeah, big question mark there. All right, let's jump over to the Fightin' Phils for a second, because I'm feeling pretty good about this Phillies team, but a lot of fans are angry about dollar dogs no longer being a part of the ballpark. Before you join the show, maybe I'm in the minority here, John. I could not care less that they got rid of dollar dogs. People glutting themselves and gorging themselves with disgusting hot dogs at the ballpark. To me, I'm happy it's done.
Oh, yeah, it was a great day yesterday. I probably am even more anti-dollar dog than you, because what people are doing, you idiots that go down there and they buy 20 hot dogs so they can throw them around.
Yeah.
Right? And the hot dog's terrible, because if they're selling more hot dogs, and have you ever actually had a good hot dog at Citizens Bank Park?
No.
An above average hot? No.
I had a good sausage. The sausages I like.
Get them like the one one concession down on the first base side towards the outfield. If you get them on the grill, you can get the good sausages. No, they're good.
Yeah, those are
as far
good.
as the regular hot dog that you get from the concession stand is terrible. And what happens during those dollar dog days are, because so many idiots buy the hot dogs, even though they don't tend to eat it. Now you're getting a microwaved hot dog that's not even cooked, because they're like, oh shit, we need to go. We need more hot dogs. We're out of hot dogs. So now you're getting a raw hot dog that tastes terrible. A buy one, get one hot dog, 2 hot dogs for $5 is a great deal. And that's all people need. You want to eat 4 hot dogs? $10 for 4 hot dogs is not a bad deal. I'm glad they're done with the dollar dogs. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of, like, people, like, last year they were throwing the hot dogs around, and it was like lots of fun. What do you think they're going to do this year if you had to buy one, if you had a dollar dog? It's going to be even worse. People are going to go in there just to buy them and throw them. So I'm glad it's over with.
Yeah, I agree. And to be honest with you, John, I can't tell you the last time I ate a hot dog, man. I can't tell. I'm trying to think back at the last time I had a hot dog. It's been a long time, probably just as long as I've ever been to like a fast food restaurant. I just can't put that crap in my body anymore. I can't do it. And now you're a big workout guy, dude. Now you're freaking working out. You can't eat that crap.
It probably hasn't been that long since I've had a hot dog, but I don't need any more occasions to be eating hot dogs. I don't mind, like, during the summertime, if we're having people over or whatever, I'll bust out the flat iron grill outside, and I'll put a bunch of Nathan's or Ballparks on there and some burgers. But outside of that, on a Tuesday night, I'm not saying, hey, I'm gonna have some hot dogs for dinner. No.
Yeah. All right. Last thing for you, John. So before you came on, I was talking about it's March 1st. And the old saying they used to tell us in elementary school is March comes in like a lion and goes out like a lamb. So it had me thinking about free agents in Philadelphia sports history that came in here like a lion and ended up just being a lamb. Who pops into your mind thinking of one of the worst free agent signings in Philadelphia sports history?
Yeah, I heard you talking about Adam Eaton, which is a great one, because he even got a World Series ring and came back to the ceremony just to be a jerk, and he got booed, which is exactly what he was looking for. The Eagles, the two that come to mind for me for the Eagles would be Chip Kelly's, the Byron Maxwell, and the Cowboys running back.
DeMarco Murray.
DeMarco Murray. Horrendous. Just a bad idea. They already had Ryan Matthews. Hey, let's get another high-priced running back. Like the Phillies, Danny Tarnable back in the day, if you remember, they signed him to a contract, and he fouled a ball off his foot. He never played him. I think he had like 3 at-bats, and he was supposed to be the big free agent signing when the Phillies were bad in the 90s, and you really had no reason to go down the games. And they wouldn't have been any good with Danny Tarnable. But Danny Tarnable, as a kid, I'm like, Danny Tarnable, this is great. They got Danny Tarnable. He had 3 at-bats, and the season was over. So,
yeah, and I've seen people in the chat throwing out Greg Jeffries was another one for the Phillies, right?
Greg Jeffries was 4 years, $20 million, and he wasn't like horrible. Was Andy Ashby, was he a free agent signing, or did they trade for him? Because I remember I think it was 1998. They tried to do a co-ace between Curt Schilling and Andy Ashby. And Ashby had been here before. He was actually drafted by the Phillies, and then he was in San Diego for a while. And he came back in, and you could tell right away, it's like, he's not going to be able to hold up. Well, it was a trade, so it wasn't free agency. But you knew he wasn't going to be able to handle the media and the fans of this town.
You know who they traded for him? It says Ashby returned to the Phillies when he was traded from the Padres for Adam Eaton.
Oh, my God.
So here we go, coming full circle.
A tomato can for a tomato can. Awesome.
Yeah. Coming full circle, my brother. Well, John, I appreciate you making time. So you got your show every night at 9. And a lot of people keep asking, what the hell's going on with you, man? What else you doing these days?
What is going on with me? I've got my taxes done early this year, so I have money to pay the bills. That's what's going on with me. I have something in the works that I'm hoping that we can finalize and get announced in the next week or two. And then, listen, I'm a free agent. I love what you guys are doing, what you're doing with the Philly Sports Power Hour. Hey, I'm ready to find somebody to work with, and if that's at a radio station, awesome. If it's not at a radio station, I'm ready to go the independent route. So be on the lookout for that. I'm ready to start something here in the next month. So every night at 9:00 on YouTube, just kicking some stuff around with Steve from Delco or Delco Steve. And then look for me coming up here in the next couple of weeks. I think I'm going to be doing something.
Awesome. Well, I know I speak for a lot of people. We miss hearing you on the radio, but we're looking forward to whatever the future brings, my man.
Thanks, brother. Good to talk to you. Thanks.
Appreciate you making time, John. I'll talk to you soon. Have a good weekend, bro.
All right, buddy. You too.
See you, John. Johnny Marks joining the show. And I saw some people in the chat who maybe are not sports talk radio people saying who he was, but John Marks was one of the best on WIP for a long time. And I listened to John almost every single day. He had a great show with Ike Reese. They did the afternoon show from 2 to 6, and John left. You got to give him a lot of credit. He left because he wanted to spend more time with his family. He's been on record about this on a couple of other shows that, listen, if the money was right, he maybe would have made the sacrifice to not see his family a lot. But when you're doing a 2 to 6 show, you're not getting home till after 7. You're missing all that time with your kids. They couldn't come to an agreement, so he walked away from one of the top shows on WIP. And it's been announced they're replacing him with Spike Eskin is going to be stepping in. Spike Eskin, Howard Eskin's son. Some people call him Brett, but Spike Eskin and Jack Fritz. So, but nothing against those guys, but John was one of the best, so he will be missed. But be on the lookout for John Marks, because I think, like you just heard, maybe some things getting announced soon. So he's looking, but very good. Very good. I also see some of you wondering, hey, where you can find the Fanatic if you're not local. We're on the iHeartRadio app, so you could do that. I see people saying Odyssey, but iHeartRadio app, or you can go to 975thefanatic.com. So hopefully get a good show going for you guys tomorrow and Sunday morning. But continuing with some of these free agents, and I see people in the chat talking about some of the worst free agent signings in Philadelphia sports history. And that's why we got to be careful, because in about a week and a half, not even really, March 11th is when the legal tampering period starts in the NFL. Is we got to be careful not to just go after the big names, because let's flip it to a positive. JAKIB Sports posted on Twitter the other day an underrated Philadelphia Eagle over the last 25 years. And I answered the question, and in fact, they reshared that. They retweeted it. And I said it was Malcolm Jenkins. Because in my opinion, even though I think Malcolm Jenkins does get respect, I think he's completely underrated as to what he brought to this Philadelphia Eagles team the year they went to the Super Bowl. He was not only on the field literally for every single play, he also played special teams, and he was a great leader off the field. But when I talk about not necessarily going after the big free agent, when the Philadelphia Eagles signed Malcolm Jenkins, that was kind of a under-the-radar move. There were other safeties available in free agency that everybody wanted. And I don't even remember the names right now as to who they were, but there were other free agent names that everybody wanted. Was Jesse Bates one of them? I can't even remember. Bird. Yeah, there it is. Bird. I think people wanted, was it Brandon Bird? Who was Bird? Was he with the Buffalo Bills? But everybody wanted him. I'm trying to remember who. Or was it Jarius Bird? I can't remember who it was. But it may have been Jarius Bird from the Buffalo Bills. And everybody wanted that safety. And when it was announced and reported that the Philadelphia Eagles were signing Malcolm Jenkins, who was with the New Orleans Saints, a lot of people was, I'm not sure. Yeah, Ward was another one that year. But there was two big-name safeties. I think it was Jarius Bird and it was Ward. And I can't remember where Ward played. Was it with Cincinnati? Refresh my memory if you're in the chat as to who Ward was and who he played for. I can't remember. But that year, Malcolm Jenkins was not the big-name free agent safety, and it turned out to be one of the best moves the Philadelphia Eagles have ever made in signing Malcolm Jenkins. And I actually think they should have never let him walk. But when I say that he's an underrated Philadelphia Eagle, it's because we all talk about Brian Dawkins, as we should. Brian Dawkins is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, Philadelphia Eagle ever. We talked about that earlier when we were talking about Stacey Andrews. But you can't deny the leadership and the skill that Malcolm Jenkins brought at the safety position. And I'm not taking anything away from B-Dog, ever. But Malcolm Jenkins and his team accomplished something B-Dog never could. And again, not taking anything away from Dawkins, but I think when we talk about some of the greatest players in Philadelphia Eagles history, Malcolm Jenkins should be in that conversation for what he brought to this team. You look at this team now, they don't have guys like Malcolm. I'm not even talking from a leadership perspective. Let's just look at what he did on the field. The guy didn't come off the field. He's covering punts. He's covering kickoffs. And he never missed a freaking snap. So Malcolm Jenkins, an absolute beast. But like we end every Philly Sports Power Hour with a little Today in Sports History. March 1st, 1969. The great Mickey Mantle announced his retirement because of persistent knee injuries. 18 seasons, 536 home runs, a .298 batting average. And anybody, whether you're a baseball fan or not, know the name Mickey Mantle. And I always think about A Bronx Tale, one of my favorite movies. I don't know why this is popping in my head, but during the commercial break for Ocean Casino, you saw Chaz Palminteri pop up. And you remember A Bronx Tale, Sonny. Sonny had 5 fingers, but he only used 3. And he tells Colarulo when Colarulo says, "Oh, you made Mickey Mantle cry." Sonny says to him, "Mickey Mantle don't care about you, so what do you care about him?" So that always reminds me of that movie. But everybody knows Mickey Mantle. So March 1st, 1969, he announced his retirement. But I appreciate everybody here in the chat. I see you all talking about things in the chat, and I appreciate it. And Future of Men, appreciate the kind words. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Hit that like button for me. Hit that share button. Tune in tomorrow and Sunday. Give me a call on the Fanatic if you're listening. Love to hear from you. And we'll be back here Monday, 10 a.m. for the Philly Sports Power Hour. We'll see what happens. But 2 weeks now, not this Monday, but the following, legal tampering period. I see Daz making me laugh in the chat. But hit that like button. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend, everybody. I'll be back on Monday. And as always, go Birds.
Go for the polls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.